Welcome to What the Heck's, your source for Warhammer Underworlds in under 30 matches played in a single day, although it felt like more.
Oh, so many more.
I'm your co-host, Davey, and with me, for the first time ever, recording this podcast in the same room is my co-host, Phil. How are you, Phil?
Hey, doing pretty well.
Yeah. We are recording from the Convention Center Hotel at Adepticon. We're about to head into day 2. And so this is a quick hit to try and get you day 1. Depending on how things go in the next week, we may be able to have like a terrible quality auto recording detailing what actually happens today on day 2, because I'll be on vacation, like trying to huddle in a closet and talk into like a headphone mic or something like that. So that's your context. The biggest news that people have all seen at this point is that the new war band. I can't even remember what they're called now.
No idea.
Yeah.
Zombie guy.
Electro Zombies, the electric slide.
Yeah.
So they look cool. I think we'll get a chance to talk more about them another time. But if you haven't seen them, go take a look.
Yeah, it seems interesting.
Yeah.
Larger warband again, so
Yeah.
see if that's good or bad.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that was, at first I was like, oh yeah, man, that's what death does. But vampires and Wraith Creepers and Mournflight, they're all four-person war bands. So little getting back to the roots maybe. I'm kind of excited for some of the things that we have seen there, but we'll get to that more later. We're going to really briefly go through, since we're a little short on time, we're really going to briefly go through our standard segments here. But we both know what the heck's been going on with you, right?
Well, yeah, I think so.
Yeah?
I've been painting a little bit for this Adepticon.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard of it. But yeah, actually had to slap some paint on a model. I was not sure I was going to do, but I did it.
Nice. Yeah, and I smashed through some purifiers. So I could return to them and touch them up, but man, I kind of know how that usually goes. So. And then community shout-outs. I'm going to give just such a brief mention, a couple articles that I'm excited to read and have not read yet because I've been prepping for Adepticon / here. And that is Mandarga dropped a Blade Coven article, which I love reading about those corner cases. And then Compaq dropped a set of battle reports about his Warhammer World outing with Rippas, I think. So
Yes.
I am looking forward to sitting down and reading through that. So I don't know. One of the car trip, road trip traditions in my family is that I'll read aloud to the kids. Maybe on the drive up, you can read aloud Compaq's blog.
Oh, all right.
So, but yeah, and then of course we wanted to. One of the coolest things about this so far was to see all these names, put faces to names, and all that sort of thing. So, and it was a lot of people, would say their name like and then they'd have to be. Occasionally they'd like show their face. I'm like, that doesn't help me. I don't.
Pull the mask down and be like, "It's me."
Yeah.
Okay.
and then they give a handle. The most embarrassing was Tony Field, who was actually here. Imagine he walked up. He had a Marshall shirt on. He's got a mask. He was like, "Hey, it's Tony." I was like, "Yes, you are Tony."
And I definitely know.
And he's like,
who you
Tony
are.
Field. I was on your podcast. I was like, "Yes, all right, awesome." Yeah. As soon as like I heard him say more than a couple sentences, like, "Oh yeah, there he is." So
Yeah.
so it's cool. But other folks, Amon, Jimmy, Mike, Jordal, Skylar, Brian, Jazz from our crew. Josh is up here cheerleading for us. I got to meet Gerard the Professor, more about that later. Requisite, Alex Gonzalez, Joe SZ is what I'm going to do with the last name because there's a lot there and a lot of folks. So if I left your name off, I'm sorry. I'm kind of going off the dome here, but it was really cool to see folks. So yeah, should we get into it?
Let's get into it.
Okay, so we rolled up yesterday, and we were actually we didn't cut it super close, but we cut it closer than anybody else. I think we were about the last to arrive.
There was only one other person, I think, that was later than we were.
Yeah.
I think everyone else was way more worried about it than we were.
Yeah.
So we show up and everybody's just like texting, like, "Where are you guys? Are you not going to make it?"
Yeah. And I was like, and I started I'm like, did I understand the schedule wrong? Am I in trouble? But One nice thing I had to say is that there was plenty of room to play all the games,
Yeah.
So, and it was kind of fun. You're like in a long line, and so you'd be playing, and like there was one where, to my right was Jazz, and on the other side of her was you. So we were just like,
yeah.
Jazz's wingman, for her game. That was pretty cool. Where you play side by side. So it was kind of fun because you're real focused on the game in front of you, but they're just people to your left and your right. It's pretty awesome to be in person again.
Yeah. Well, and then when you hear the I rolled a crit and I rolled a crit, and you're like,
it's not going over there. Yeah, sometimes you're not hearing the specifics, but you're like, I'm detecting salt over there. So, pretty good there. What our format? Can you give a quick rundown of what the format ended up being?
Yeah. So with what did we end up with? 38.
Yeah, something like that. Yep.
So with such a small field, originally the tournament was supposed to cut to 32, which would have meant we basically cut to everybody. They decided to keep it to a 2-day and cut to top 16, which is nice that they didn't include basically the entire field.
Yeah.
But it's still a large percentage of the field. So it was sort of like if you can get 3 wins, I think you're in.
Yeah.
And then obviously best 2 out of 3 and normal other stuff.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that we knew coming in, but is still rough, is the 90-minute.
It's true. Man, I have to think that. I think I finished all of my games with about 20 minutes to spare, but all of my rounds went to just 2-0s.
Yeah.
So theoretically had time, but like it I don't know. It would have been tight, and I think other people were a lot tighter.
Yeah. I talked to one poor guy. Like I was feeling burnt out somewhere around round 3. I want to say we were pretty early, and I was like, man, I'm glad I just went 2-0 every time so far, one way or the other. And he's like, I haven't had less than 3.
Oh no!
I was like, oh man, gosh, it's so crowded. Because like even just having that 15 minutes spare to like get up and stretch your legs.
Extra space between rounds helps. You can go stretch, get a drink, go to bathroom, just unwind before you have to reset.
Yeah. We did a quick rundown of who showed up, what factions, and this is it's a little tricky because a couple people like signed up and then dropped, and then there were some that dropped before the very last round. But this is generally accurate. There's a lot of singles, like a lot of warbands represented only once, but the largest showing is coming from Crushes with 5, Crimson Court with 5, and that's not really a surprise to anyone. So,
yeah, well, Crushes, I don't think so, but I wasn't expecting so many people playing Crimson Court.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me though. Like we were talking about this on the ride down. I was like, they're all 4 fighters, 4 speed, 4 wounds.
Yeah, they're solid.
They defend on block. Like they're pretty solid and they're flexible. So. That makes things a little scary when you're not exactly sure which way they're going to go.
Yeah.
So they can shift. Let's see. Other well represented is Spike Claw Swarm with 3. And Phil's got to play 2 of them, and he's going to play the 3rd today. So he's gonna have a fine sampling of all the Spike Claw out there,
and they're all the same.
And the only other duplicates we got, there were 2 Curse Breakers and 2 Reapers, and then everyone else are just 1. And just quickly, there's Soul Raid, Dread Pageant, Miari's Purifier, Steelheart, Morn Flight, Wraith Creepers, Thundrick, Hrothgorn, Crash Racks, Despoilers, Sepulchral Guard, Condemners, Xandire, Black Powder, which salute to that guy, and then Mad Mob and Wormspat. All made a showing. So pretty big spread. That was pretty fun. So,
yeah. I mean, that's what, like at least half of the war bands, right? So I mean, that's pretty solid when you've got such a, you get a pretty well expected field and yet still see a wide representation. I think it's pretty solid.
Anything you feel like you're surprised that you didn't see show up here?
Yeah. The Cunning Crew. I would have thought somebody would be playing them.
Yeah.
Pretty solid, sort of flexible aggro warband, and I guess nobody.
Great in-faction surges, and this is a tough time for surges. So or at least I should say, surges that work well with them, whether they're in faction or not. And then, so I'm with you there. And then my other one was, I thought there'd be more Soul Raid. But somebody pointed out that unless you've got the reps, they're a pretty intimidating warband to bring into something like this. So,
yeah.
Alex Gonzalez was out there crushing it with them. Like he was doing some pretty cool things. So he's acquitted himself well, and he's in the top cut too. So.
Yeah, it's good.
But yeah, we jumped into it. What do you have any thoughts? So listeners who listen to our previous episode will know pretty close to the latest iterations on our decks. Did you have any last minute changes that you can remember?
So not really a change, because I had sort of been hemming between a number of different options, and I think I had mentioned which ones. But I ended up including Unassailable as my last score, and one score end phase. And that worked out very well.
Remind me, Unassailable is?
Unassailable is either you have the only surviving leader, or you have the primacy token. And playing crushes, often I had the primacy token, so it was like, well, okay, that's basically free.
Yeah.
And there was even one time where I scored it just from having their leader dead. So
fair.
Worked out pretty well there.
Good pickup. Any other changes in there, or was that the one and only?
That's the only change, although I wish I'd taken out Silver Lining.
This has been burning you?
I've not scored it yet.
Oh man, it's been solid for me. I had one where I was chasing it, but I was kind of leading anyway. But for me, let's see, I cut Live for the Fight, which is a +1 dice on attack. It's got a brawler caveat that doesn't apply.
Yep.
Because I don't have a range 1 brawler, I don't have a scything brawler. And then there's another one. I have one of my end phases I cut out. I put in. I took out. I couldn't decide if it was like Trace the Ley Lines or Purifying Light, and then I think it's Shadow Match. And this is where you have to have upgrades equal to your wounds, or hold an objective equal to your wounds. And so I can just pick it up with a hold objective 3. What I didn't realize until part of the way through I was staring at it is that it is you have to have exactly the number of upgrades as you not 3 or more. It's have exactly 3, and it's like, oh no. So I had some weird games where I was like, well, I would normally just keep piling stuff on Bahanar like some crazy hobo carrying all the equipment for the whole warband, but and then I was like, well, I guess Sinella, you get to walk around with some flashy stuff too, so I can score this. So not great on that, but I think in retrospect maybe Purifying Light was, but we'll see how it plays out. Purifying Light being Miari has to hold an objective. So but yeah, so I said I cut Live for the Fight, but I didn't say what I put in. I put in Whetted Blades, which is pick one, have a reroll on your first attack, or gain Cleave. And the reroll is doing 2 things. It's helping me have a chance to inspire. It's only range 1 or 2, so there's some restriction there, but helps me get the inspire off, or helps me score Unequal Contest, which is all successes in your attack roll, which is one of my stickier surges, which has played out to be true. But that's those are our thoughts going in. Did you have any matchups you were worried about coming into this, or?
Honestly, I thought that Soul Raid would be a little bit tough because their control. I wasn't sure how the mirror match would go for crushes.
Yeah.
But generally, I wasn't too concerned. I know crushes are just well positioned right now, so I was like, I think I have a pretty decent chance against anybody.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, mine was Soul Raid that I was worried about, like to the extent like I almost panicked and changed into something else, and I was like, this thing I would change, like I don't
just tell them what it was.
Yeah, I was like, it might have been Far Striders. So, and then I was like, there's no reason to think these Far Striders would do any better whatsoever. Like I don't know what I'm talking about. So, but yeah, we'll see. Maybe we'll get a chance at Soul Raid here today, depending on how things shake out. I think with the bracket, we'll talk more about it at the end here. So, but that's it. So what did you draw round 1?
I got Aaron, our very own Aaron Bowler, playing his first game of Underworlds in a couple of years, and playing a Spike Claw Swarm deck that Davey pulled from the internet for him.
Yeah, which turned out to be Requisen's deck, or like an earlier iteration. I don't know if it's exactly the same, but
it's extremely close.
How would you know that?
Well, we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
But yeah, that deck is quite good.
Yeah.
And in the first game that we played, I only won by 1.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, going into the third round, we were tied, and I was like, wait a minute. Aaron hasn't played in a couple of years, and he's like giving me a run for my money. He doesn't like. He's having to ask me like, "How does this work?
Yeah.
What is primacy?
Did you say the word delve? What is that?" Yeah.
I'm like, oh no! But squeaked that one out, and then I was able to square it off for the second game, and when I could get to Scritch early, it was not particularly difficult at that point. Because once Scritch was down, it sort of all fell apart.
Right. But that can be a tall order sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Very tall.
Yeah. I played against Canaan's Reapers. A player, Stu, was playing, and he knew his warband pretty well, I would say, but has not played as much as we have. And then but it was fun because it was one of those things where like you play somebody who has been kind of playing in their own meta, so some of the expected moves I would see would not develop, and so I was going with this. I felt good about this matchup. I was like, I have enough passive scoring. I can sit back, score, and then pick off some of the little guys as they come forward. Kanan's going to get maybe 1 attack per round, depending on how he commits. And I was like, and he's not going to send Kanan early because then I'll just wail on Kanan and take that down, and then it's easy mode. So I'll have Bahanar up, pick off some of those guys, get some defensive upgrades on him so I can tank the eventual Kanan hit. And then he was like, YOLO! And Kanan came flying in and just smoked Bahanar like first attack both games. And I was like, oh my God.
We're playing on hard mode today.
Yeah, exactly. And he was actually casting some spells with Kanan. I was like, what is this spell? Like, that seems crazy. And then I'm like, oh man, if this goes off, it's super duper bad for me. Yeah. So it was pretty fun, but I did end up taking that one down. I think got that 2-0, and it was fun. I played Kanan a little bit because Josh likes to bring them to our locals, so not totally unfamiliar. So that was helpful.
Nice.
So we're both 1-0, and I think most of the Madison field is 1-0 after the first round. So that's kind of an encouraging start for a crew. What that means, though, is that you go play someone else who also won a game. So, Phil?
Yeah, so then I got Requisen's Rats for round 2, so it was like, oh, cool. I'm playing Spike Claws twice in a row here. This doesn't seem likely, but turned out more likely than you'd think.
Yeah.
And this was definitely tough. I was doing Whack-A-Rat as best I could.
Yeah.
But like, they can just revive, and without giving too much away, you can go find the deck. I don't want to like try and do a blow by blow through the whole deck, but like the idea is that all the expendable rats are like intended to die. And so you've got all the stuff that's punishing for killing, and then all the stuff that like gives you glory for getting killed, and so like I could get kills and I could gain glory, but it almost never netted me anything because it was like, I kill you, well, I get a glory, or I have expendable, and it's like, oh man, I'm just like, I can't do anything. And then eventually it gets to the point where you've got the like dying curse and screaming demise and all the stuff that's equipped where it's like, well, if I kill that rat now, I lose an action, or if I kill that rat now, I die. And it's just like, what am I supposed to do here? And then Scritch is hanging out in the backfield with like 7 wounds, on guard in a gloom hex, and he's just like, don't touch me, stay away.
This is my spot.
And the weird thing is, I was expecting so much aggro, that I have a whole bunch of reactions for the crushes that
Yeah.
expect attacks
Yeah.
and charges,
Yeah.
and the rats are just like, and I'll just move into your enemy territory.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is it going to be a charge? Can I counter charge? And no, just a move. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sitting
That's
on-
really clever. I experienced that a little bit in one of those where I was Rippa's into Spike Claw. This was last
sure.
season. And it was the same thing where I had a whole bunch of cards that were like all my defense, because he wasn't going to, like, he made maybe 2 attacks in the whole game.
Yeah, it just did like tons of my gambits just didn't matter. So I was like,
and upgrades too, like survivability upgrades doesn't matter.
Yeah,
that's
you just don't
more or
need
less
it.
a dead card, because if he's not making attacks,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. So
So I ultimately did lose both games, but only by 1 glory. So I was like, well, at least it was close. Although I kind of felt like I was like, no, so close.
Yeah.
Each time. But so I dropped to 1-1 at this point.
Yeah.
But not with a bad differential. So that I think probably helped me later.
sure. Yeah. Well, I got Gerard, aka Gerard the Professor. He was running Mornflight, which I feel like I didn't spend a whole lot of time thinking about, and it kind of showed here. So we played in our first one. It was telling that a number of my early game decisions on like aligning boards and placing objectives, Gerard would be like, "Whoa, that's unexpected," and I was like, "That means one of us read this wrong, and I don't think it's you." So the first one, I had just an on fire first round, and I was all charged up. I was feeling amazing. I had a lead, and I had great upgrades out. But I let the inspires happen, and once the agonized one. There's one of the Bornflight ladies that defensive crits don't count as any kind of success.
Yeah. Yep.
And that felt super rough because all my upgrades didn't really matter anymore. Thinking about it, the only thing that's going to help you there, I guess, is the Silent Helm. Really, I mean, it'll help some, because what would happen is. I had like every face of the die is a success. I got to re-roll, and I've got 2 defense dice. And he's like, but if I roll a crit, none of it matters. I was like, oh man. And so kind of ripped me down there. And then I decided to really go for kind of a crazy, the hand I drew in the second game, I had Channel the River, which is like you can push 3 if you're willing to burn an Ether Quartz. And I had it with Elemental Blessing, so it made sense to do that. And Zenith, so I started off like right away. I blasted Bahanar way up into the lines, and I was about to start smashing, and he dropped the illusion for on guard, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh man, and it all kind of fell apart there. I did manage to get like a kill, but that second game was more of a blowout than the first. So I went down hard. But man, I really enjoyed meeting Gerard. I've seen him chatting online. What a nice guy! What an awesome dude! That was really fun.
Super fun. And I don't think it would be giving anything away at this point to say that Gerard went undefeated on day 1. So
yeah, right, exactly.
His Mornflight deck was on point.
Yeah, undefeated is 4-0-1. He did have a draw against Soul Raid.
Okay, so it's closer than I thought.
Yeah, but. There's that. All right, so and I think all the Madison crew ended up 1-1. There was a lot of punctured balloons there. Still pretty early, so let's see what we can bounce back. What'd you get for round 3?
Very surprisingly, you got.
Oh wait, sorry, I'm going to interrupt. There's one story I wanted to relay. When we saw Brian come back, he got crushed. Because the saying for the day was "crush is going to crush." Or when your crush is either you crush or you get crushed. Like there were a lot of variations on that. And he came back and like, I got crushed. But even worse, he had one game that he was like, well, I got wiped off the table, but I had a big lead in glory. And I was like, I've got this in the bag. And then that Crush It player dropped the In-Faction Annihilation for 5 more glory and snatched it away. I was like, oh, man. And that's a callback to me. I had to find Jordal because he's, as I've said many times, he at the first clash I went to, he dropped Annihilation on me with his Iron Jaws. That was back when it was just 4 factions in the game, and that was a rough moment. So I'm glad Brian got to carry the spirit of that experience forward. So.
Be traumatized forever.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, you're round 3.
Yeah. So at this point, Submarine a little bit into a matchup with Despoilers.
Yeah.
Gashrax Despoilers. Goat Boys.
Yeah.
Very surprising to see them. It was not a matchup I was considering, but it was like very aggro on aggro here, and so. That's always a good thing when you're playing Crushes.
Yeah.
And so it was, and he even mentioned, he was like, man, this feels like it's going to be a tough matchup. And I was kind of thinking, yeah, it's going to be a tough matchup.
Yeah, it's going to be rough.
And it was. He was doing his best. Game 1, Morgok was dead on the second activation. So I was like, maybe this is going to be a problem. But then he was basically out of steam, though, because... Draknar charged in and got the big hit, but then he's charged in my territory surrounded by 3 crushes.
Yeah.
So then it was like, well, okay, I think I'm just going to start crushing.
I'm going to pound on this guy for a while. Yeah, exactly.
And then every little guy that he had to send in to try and get the kills, it was just like, well, you hit for 2, and then I'll just kill you.
And that matchup is the nightmare scenario for the Despoilers to inspire. I got to kill 2 of these guys to inspire.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, I think I probably already won by that point.
Yeah. So it was a 2-0 kind of a blowout because he just couldn't really get anything going. He could get hits, he just couldn't get kills.
Yeah.
And I think that's especially where the plus wounds and damage reduction and healing really shines for them, because it's like, even if you can hit me, you still can't kill me. Yeah. Which is a bad feeling. So.
Yeah. For my round 3, I ended up drawing into Curse Breakers. And a fella named Brian that does stuff up with a Michigan GT. He was running Curse Breakers, but I hadn't played them in so long that I was like, when I saw Stormsire's Curse Breakers, I had to think, I'm like, I know that's Stormcast. Which Stormcast is that? Like, the magic ones. And it's funny, you get used to not playing somebody, a particular faction. And I deploy for them, like, those 2, the 2 mini guys, whatever, the not, so Amos and Rastus.
Yeah.
I was like, that's not 2. They start on 2, and then he empowers Amos. I'm like, oh, you're on 3 smash with a reroll doing 3 damage. That sounds horrifying to me. Like, I am not sure what I'm supposed to do other than kill Amos as fast as possible.
Yep.
So, but all the defensive tricks I had really came in. So there was a lot of like. Stormsire just throwing bolt after bolt after bolt into Bahanar and bouncing off. So
yeah. Well, I mean, Bahanar, when he's got 2 block on guard in gloom, it's like a 90% success rate when you have rerolls. It's just like
it's pretty tough.
Good luck.
And so I had some pretty good card draw on that and took it away. This actually. A bad sign for me after the first 2 rounds is that Bahanar had yet to survive a game.
Yeah.
So, which in the first round, the fact that I still managed to win after losing him was a little encouraging, but went down so hard in the second round. But here, Bahanar survives both games, and I take both games fairly handily. It's just one of those once all his defensive tricks get online, if you are not a dirty cheater like Mournflight, then, then there's not a lot you can do. Back to 2-1, feeling a little bit better.
Yeah.
What do you get?
What did I get? I think at this point I got Crimson Court.
You played Jeff. I don't remember. I don't think I talked to you much about this game already. So you played Crimson Court. Was this a aggro-y or?
It felt like a very flex hunger build. The vast majority of the scoring was off of having hunger counters, and the speed at which he was putting out hunger counters was surprising. Like, first game, I think he had 4 or 5 hunger counters on every single fighter.
Oh, geez.
Within the first round, and I was like, am I going to get blown out here? Because he hallwayed he hallwayed
Oh,
me.
yeah.
So the entire first round was me just trudging forward, trying
Yeah.
to do something.
Yeah. And that's a skill there to, not panic and say, okay, like this is what I do.
Which thankfully, having played oh boy, Corn guys I played last
Magor's?
time. Magor's Fiends. Having played Magor's Fiends last Adepticon,
Yeah.
I was very familiar with that feeling of I am the beatdown, and I need to be patient because I know if I can get there, I can probably still get all the kills I need.
Yeah. Guess I'm just gonna walk for a while.
Yeah. So I mean, literally, like 2 actions that are just I walk forward 3 and do nothing.
Yeah.
Which feels bad, but like they're not gonna want to run past me. So I know that's like, well, okay, if I can just hold out, get there. So I score like nothing the first round of both games.
Yeah.
But once I get into them, it's just like, well, okay, we'll start hitting for 3 or 4 damage, and they start going down. And then, and when you need all those hunger counters, it felt like every kill he was just like, oh no, I'm just like losing resources.
Yeah.
And again, like they're good aggro warband, but the damage wasn't really there to kill crushes.
Yeah.
Because they're all hitting on 2 damage for the most part. So it was close, I think, for most of the games. I don't remember the exact scores, but did end up killing almost all the vampires both games, which then meant there was just not enough left to score all the hunger stuff.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, so that did you feel like you had to do any aggressive mulligans to get particular things, or I mean, because I feel like it's mulliganing and it's also like really curating your power hand in those early ones to make sure, because you've only got 2 rounds to really do it, so you want to make sure you've got exactly what you want once things kick off, and you've got an extra round to make that happen.
Yeah. So I think I would have, except that I didn't need to.
Oh, okay. So you
I think I had Commanding Stride in my first hand one game, and then I had Outrun Death in the other one.
Oh, nice.
So I was just like, okay, I can push forward and I can get speed boost. So I was very close to being able to charge both games in the first round. Well, in the second game, I squared it up, so then I didn't have to walk all the way down.
Fair. My round, round 4 we're on?
Yeah.
Round 4. My round 4, I drew Skylar, our guy. So, playing as Mad Mob. I think I'd helped him with like one practice game where I ran a Hrothgorn at him or something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's what I did. We actually hadn't played this matchup, so we didn't know and I felt okay about it because, all the orcs start on 2 damage. And so the key is if I can kind of keep them there, if they have to hit me twice to kill me, then I'm a lot better off. Because people will sometimes sneak a hit through, and as long as it's not a 1-shot kill, it's hard to get not 1 but 2 hits through. Is that so? First one we played broadboards, and I got an early lead, and then he engineered a really awesome comeback. I was at 14 glory. He scored enough in the end phase of the last one to catch up, but then I had 4 more for stuff. So I managed to stay ahead of that. But I was super worried about it because I knew he had like a third end phase. I couldn't quite do the math. I'm like, I know he's got the potential for a big end score because he still has a guy alive, and they have these, he's got plenty of stuff that's like primacy and all in your territory. And I felt real good going in that last round because I was like, it's cool. I managed to get primacy from him. I'm just going to sit on this. That's going to deny a bunch of his objectives. And he's like, anyway, I'm going to play this power card, which gives me primacy. And I was like, damn, that's not good for me. But then I got to hallway him on the next one, and it was pretty close to a shutout. I think he had the primacy for that card, so he had one spent, but he never got to actually spend it. And it was, we talked about it afterwards. It was a thing where I got all the defensive upgrades for Bahanar online early, and rather than running past him, he stayed to fight him. And he's like, man, I don't know why I did that. He identified himself. He's like, I don't know why I did that. If Glissette is up, I'll run right past Glissette rather than trying to smash my head to pieces, trying to knock her down. But I just I lost track and went. And so, yeah. So, but that turned out we hadn't really done the math on it, so I think he was feeling like he was out, but it turns out when the cut is half the field, there's a good chance. So, but this meant that coming into this last round, some of us, I think all of us were feeling a little bit must win because again hadn't done the math. I was like I was with Skylar, because we just said I was like, yeah, I think 3-2 is not guaranteed, and so I was like, I really want to win this last one. But it was kind of a murderer's row. Like it looked, didn't feel like there were any good options coming into this. What did you get for your last round?
I got Alex, and he was playing the one and only Idneth. And so I like I said, I thought this was going to be a tough matchup.
Yeah.
He said immediately, he's like, not looking forward to the matchup as well.
Yeah.
Which made me feel a little better, I guess, when we sat down. And turned out that actually, yes, it was definitely in my favor.
Okay. Just hard for them to square off enough damage.
Yeah.
I mean, some of his disruption is really good on objective holders, but you don't care.
Yeah. And I think he even said after one of the games, he's like, it's just too much beef. I just can't cut through all of that. And so I think the game became like keep away. How much can I just stay away from them? And with pushes and speed boosts, it's actually pretty difficult, even in hallway, to completely stay away.
Well, and then your countercharge shenanigans. You have got a bunch of push and commanding stride, and countercharge is a rough one because I'm always like, well, I can ping some damage off this guy from range. You're like, no, you can't.
I think there was even one where it looked like he was probably trying to set up a spear throw to pull me into a lethal.
Yeah.
And then when he charged, I countercharged away from the lethal right up next to him, and he's like, well, I guess I'll still attack you, but it's like, hey there.
Feels bad. I didn't even see that Rippos was a possibility for someone I could be playing, but I got Joe, who hangs out on our Discord a little bit, and he was playing Rippas, and I felt really good about this because I've played a ton of Rippas in my time, and every time I played Rippas and was playing against Purifiers, I was like, I hate every part of this, and I was like, okay, that's got to be a good sign, and it is, because it's that thing where he's got to land 2 hits basically.
Yep.
So there'll be some lucky bites get through or a lucky arrow here or there, but one of those is not enough to drop one of the Purifiers. And he did exactly that. Like there was one round where I was walking around with, I think almost all the elves were vulnerable, like just walking around with 1 health because like bites kept sneaking through. But it was like, all right, Mina, you're not inspired. I hope your arrow attack is going to work out for you. So that was just it was just a very favorable matchup for me there, which I was fortunate to get that late in the day. So,
yeah.
But that meant we were both 4-1, and we ended up with the 4th and 5th seed respectively.
Yep.
And that also meant that after we went and hung out with people, we got to then see what we were playing today. And who did you draw into?
I pulled Jimmy Molini playing his rat.
Yeah, completing the rat hat trick.
Yeah,
so. The rat trick? Oh, I missed it. There it is. I got there eventually.
There you go.
Aaron's on the bed back here behind me. He pointed at me, and I'm like, I know I missed something here. So, I'm going to come back to this. Go.
But yeah, not what I would like to see. I felt like that was a really tough matchup both times, day 1. So getting at the first matchup, day 2, I don't want to like psych myself out to be like, oh, I guess I'm out. But that's how I'm feeling.
Yeah. I drew a Crushes matchup, and we're not exactly sure. It's I think, Gus. I've got Gus. I've got Gus's Crushes, and I don't know a ton about him other than it's Crushes. And the one good thing is that I've played that matchup several times with you, so I have a sense of what I need to do. Yeah. I don't know what kind of passes he's got. If he's got some of that Got him boss, those ones you kind of abandoned in favor of more all-out aggression. So that's kind of an unknown. But I do feel good, like unlike my matchup with Mordflight, where I was like, oh, I'm not exactly sure what I'm supposed to do here. Here's like, I know what I need to do, and whether it executes or not is it's that thing where like, okay, well, if this uninspired art school just randomly kills Banar, then it's going to be real tough. So we'll see how it goes. But I think I feel a little bit better about my matchup than you do. So
yeah, I think so.
I think if you make it through. I was trying to look. I don't remember. I think if you make it through, then I play the winner of your matchup. So like
okay.
if I make it through and you make it through, then I think we're playing in the next time around.
Okay.
So,
well.
yeah. But our guys, Jazz made the cut.
Yep.
Skylar and Brian made the cut. Skylar and Brian now have to fight to the death.
Yeah. First round. Yeah. Face each other.
We're gonna snap a pool cue in half and throw it in between them. Just see who comes out. So it feels a little bad, but they're gonna surge for one glory because they got a silver lining there. One of them is guaranteed to make it through to the next round. So yeah,
it's pretty solid.
Yeah, but that's where we're at. So looking forward to day 2. That we gave us extra time this time around. So we have hour and 45-minute rounds, which feels like a big relief. Because even starting early, we had a hard time getting through some of them. I'm lucky, like you said, you went 2-0 or 0-2 every time.
Yep.
There were plenty of times I would have had no chance at a third game. That's going to feel, the only downside is going to make for another kind of long day. If you go the distance, you're playing 4 more matches today. That'll be 9 matches at Underworlds, which,
yeah.
So, and there's also, I'm not clear on what they said, like, well, even if you lose in the first round, you're still fighting for second or third. I was like, I don't know if I really care about that. There's really tall glass trophies for second and third. I was like,
very shiny prizes.
Dang, man. So maybe, all right, let me think about it. So we'll see, but we'll just take it one match at a time, see where we go.
Yeah.
And that's it. We're not sure if we will manage to append a summary of day 2 onto this. That's kind of up in the air. So this may be the last of this episode you hear, or it may be followed by some hard to hear other stuff. Actually, who knows? Using this recording setup is not something I have done. Usually, we got the master engineer on the tables there.
As he shakes his head.
Yeah. So is able to help us out with that. So maybe this will sound terrible too. Who knows? Anyway, point being, we'll see what else you get, and then coming up, we'll in some way, either in this episode or next, we'll talk about day 2. And then hopefully real soon we're going to be talking about the electric slide zombies.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Get a little thriller action.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so welcome back. We are recording on the Sunday after the Grand Clash. The dust is settled. I am in an Airbnb somewhere near Akron, Ohio, after fleeing for my family spring break vacation. So apologies in advance. I think we warned you that when you got this segment, it would be a downgrade in sound quality. Although, to be honest, I haven't edited the first one, so hopefully it's not an upgrade, because that would mean that. But as promised, I'm recording off of a little headphone mic. But we get done, and that way we get more of a complete product, a complete episode out for you guys. So, Phil, how are you doing?
Recovering.
yeah. After talking nonstop on the weekend, and then rather than giving your voice a rest on the drive home, we talked Underworlds for another 2 hours on the drive home. So
yeah, as you do.
Yeah, I delivered you to your house about 9:30, 9:15, something like that, and I was like, "Oh, hope he has enough left in the tank to say hi to the spouse." So
yeah, no. I had enough energy. It was like completely just super shot vocal cords, and
yeah.
So now I'm in like gravelly sound like I've been smoking cigars for the last 30 years or something. But right. It happens.
Sure.
I guess there's a tip. Vocal health and rest are going to be important when you have to talk for 12 hours a day.
We'll talk some of that, some of the issues on the last day that maybe also contributed to that when we get there.
Sure.
But we were super happy. We made the cut, and even more happy. I can't remember if we said this in the other part. We had 5 of our Madison crew make the cut. So you, me, Brian, Skylar, and Jazz. So it was kind of like a highlight of it for me. Was we hit that with
I mean, everyone finished above 500 on the day, so that was pretty rad.
Yeah, no,
First
it was
day.
super good. I mean, we brought close to a fifth of the entire tournament, and
Yeah.
everyone that was planning to try to play in day 2 did. So,
Yeah.
Kudos to all of Madison folks for really putting in the work there.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk about the cut real quick. So there's the top 16. I think we ended up, what we roughly figured was 38 folks actually played. It was a little hard to figure out who was a last minute drop and who wasn't. A couple of people who dropped right at the end of the day on the first day. So that made the BCP notification a little tricky. But here are the 16. There's a pretty great spread of warbands, which there were in general. Half the cut were warbands that were doubles. So there's 2 Rippas, 2 Spike Claw Swarm, 2 Crimson Cord, and 2 Crushes. And then the rest, the other 8, were all solo. So Mournflight, Purifiers, Reapers, Dread Pageant, Mad Mob, Soul Raid, Hrothgorn, and Iron Souls. So that was a brave soul right there to do that.
Seriously.
What they did, so everyone was seeded. So the number 1 seed from day 1 would have been Gerard, who was 4-0-1, and then he went into the 16th seed, and so that's how everyone paired off. Who did you end up playing, Phil?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I got paired against Jimmy Molini first match of day 2. That was the 3rd Rats player. So at that point, it was having played every single person who was bringing Spike Claws to the entire tournament.
Now, when you say unfortunately, it's because Jimmy Molini's so terrible to play against. Is that?
No, he's great to play against, but it's just a really terrible matchup.
Yeah.
And I honestly, going into the match, was expecting him to be playing a deck that was a lot more similar to the ones that I had faced in the day 1.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out that was not the case at all.
I remember it because you and I were talking about passive. Like, we were thinking he'd be pretty passive. And I remember being done with my game, walking over and being like, well, that's weird. Like, Scritch is at the midline and and Moorcock is dead. Like, what is going on? And like, wait, is this only the start of round 2? Like, madness. So I was like, wow, we did not read that matchup right.
No, I didn't. And so game 1 of that match, expecting passive, no attacking. I dove Scritch right away, thinking maybe I'll get him. I did miss, so that was bad. But then, even worse, instead of doing like the runaway thing like I expected and going and standing on objectives, he just turned around and started smacking me. And I was like, oh no, I've completely misread this situation. And Morgok died in round 1. So it's very bad.
Yeah.
So I just sort of took the loss there.
Yeah.
Tried to learn as much as I could on the fly. Realized that he had multiple weapon upgrades, weapon illusions. So he was like very committed to being heavy flex to maybe even more aggro than the whole objective side of things. So ended up losing that one, I think, pretty badly. I don't remember by how much, but it wasn't particularly close. Went in the second game, had a completely different game plan. I tried to be much more patient. I was expecting him to charge me, so I just sort of waited for that to happen. We kind of had a long standoff to start, but eventually was able to lure him in towards the end of the first round. And at that point, I started getting the dice rolling and started taking rats out. And I managed to blow Scritch up sort of in the middle of that round. And everything kind of fell apart for Jimmy at that point, and kind of turned it around so that I kind of blew him out in that one. And so then it really came down to we had the third match. We both kind of knew what we were doing at that point. And so it was a really cagey, heady match. Sort of went back and forth a bit. Could not hit Scritch at all in that third matchup, though, and he ended up taking it. Not by a lot, but Obviously, getting a loss in the first round on day 2 is not what you want. So
Yeah, a little disappointing. Come excited to make the cut. I tell you, I was glad it was you facing Jimmy and not me. Like,
yeah. That would have been bad. I mean, so from our Madison crew, we did have one matchup at the start of round 1 that was 2 Madison folks facing off. So Brian and Skylar,
yeah,
which is cool in a sense because it's like, hey, they get to decide each other's fate. But on the other hand, then it's like one of them has to be out then. So a
yeah,
little unfortunate.
yeah. Right, exactly. I think Brian started making the joke later that if anyone from Madison was going to make it to the finals, that they're going to do it over the bodies of their
Yeah.
teammates on the way up. That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I drew into Gus and his crushes. And crushes are powerful, but the one thing that felt real good about this is you and I, there was no matchup I'd played more often than the Purifiers into the crushes. So I was like, I have a real good sense of what I need to do. And actually, even our most recent, the last episode, that battle report, having done that, I was like, okay, solidified some lessons. I am not going to give, unless I have no other option, I'm not going to make attacks from adjacent. I'm not going to give him brutal reprisal. And I'm going to really lean into using my pushes to make that happen. And so first round, we actually played. I had to put first board down, so I knew this was going to be the more challenging one, where he was going to be the front line, come flying in. And to be perfectly honest, Gus had some pretty poor dice with his attacks, which gave me the edge, let me get going, let me get started, and start powering people up. I did actually lose Bahanar in there, but was able to, of all people, Miari with his cool stick was bopping people on the head and knocking people down. So
Yeah.
managed to stay ahead of that. He had a little bit of a surge to catch up, but stayed ahead. And then I knew I was in it pretty well. It didn't seem like there was a whole lot of extra mobility there, and I was about to longboard him, and that went real well for me on the longboard. It was I got Bahanar online, and then standing right in the middle of that longboard and reaching out and hitting anybody who tried to walk past him, and that ended up being a blowout. So it's kind of tough for Gus, and as was the case for many of my games, people either had never played Miaris or they had played Miaris, but not for a very long time. So there was a lot of like, oh, so that is a thing that can happen. So,
Yep.
but I got to chat with Gus a little afterwards. He's a real good guy. I was glad to meet him, and I was just lucky to be playing a matchup that I knew very well. So,
For sure.
so you took an L, but to be clear, actually, one thing you and I were both like, hey, when we lose, we're getting out of here. Like we're going to get bonus points for our from our respective spouses as far as getting home earlier than expected. And one of the first things in the briefing by Tony Fields, who did an incredible job all weekend, was he said, you all signed up for day 2, so you've all signed up to play all your games.
Yep.
So you're playing
Bit of a
through,
surprise
we're
there.
like, oh, okay, I guess we're here till 7. So, but what's relevant there is that you are now playing for your seating. So it was,
Yep.
if you could still kind of turn around and get some more wins, then you go right up. You at this point that you don't have a shot at first because you're not going to be undefeated. There'll only be one of those, but you could try and claw your way back up to the podium.
Yeah. And taking the loss with one win in the match is actually like the sort of perfect scenario if you're going to lose the first match of day 2, because it gives you the best shot of getting back to second place.
Yeah. Well, what did that earn you for a second match here?
It earned me a matchup against I want to say it was Joe. Trying to remember
Ripas?
Yeah, with the Ripas. So Joe Cody SC is in some of the Discords.
Yeah.
It was a good match. I might have the order of my matchups wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Joe second. It was a very aggressive matchup because we were both wanting to go smack each other.
Mm-hmm.
And this one also went to 3 games. We sort of had a back and forth with dice. So The first match, he was really hot coming in, sort of jumped on my guys, got kills early, scored a bunch of stuff for getting into my territory, and
Yeah.
it kind of snowballed out of control on me. Game 2, I squared us up, and I was able to get to him fast and just blew through a bunch of his fighters.
Yeah.
And so again, pretty much just the normal aggro matchup. Whoever gets those big hits first is going to have the advantage.
Yeah.
And then the third match, thankfully, was a much closer matchup. We were going back and forth, trading blows. The scoring was relatively low this time. And it all came down to the final dice roll. So I had a big charge with Ed Cracker or Hard Skull. I kept calling him Head Cracker all day. That's not his name. It's Ard Skull. So I had enough to go in, get a kill. It's final activation that I had. So if I hit, I kill off the last wolf and take it pretty handily. If I miss, he has the chance to score more stuff. Turns out that if I miss, he wins by about 2 or 3 points. So I rolled in and, of course, rolled the double crit. So ends it kind of on that anticlimactic note where you're just like, oh, well, I guess you're not going to be able to do a lot about that. So,
right.
But it's cool to have those big swings. Joe was a great opponent. And we basically talked about how like these aggro matchups are, it's a lot about the dice because they're both trying to smack each other and whoever gets those hits early.
Yeah. It was fun. I got done with mine before you were done. We were getting lunch after this, so it's kind of, I kept floating back over. I didn't want to hover, but I was trying to see, this guy, are we going to get lunch? But come and look down and be like, man, I know Scrum is no longer a surge in the game.
Oh, yeah.
But you guys could have scored it multiple times over with your
Sure
3-fighter versus 3-fighter matchup. It's like,
yeah,
just brawling in the middle.
Everybody just piling in there.
Yeah. I had a very different matchup. We were reenacting the Dire Chasm starter box. We had a Dread Pageant versus Mayari's Purifiers. I thought I was getting Jimmy Molini, and then we were kind of jumping the gun a little bit. And so there was a shuffle around. All of a sudden, I was playing Brian from Madison. So, like he said, if somebody was going to advance, it was going to be over the bodies of our, our teammates. So I've said many times on this podcast, a lot of my games against Brian at the store when we're playing locally take a long time because we are, I don't know, you kind of get into these mind games, getting each other's heads. He's got a ton of pushes, so do I. And we both had quite a few things that we're going to score off of that. I wasn't quite sure going in. I was concerned that he could outpassive me because of all the kind of Slanesh ones of he's basically got a double dominant position and hold 2, all these different ways of scoring it. So I was a little worried. I think I was confident I had better passive surges, but I thought he probably had better passive end phases. So the first one, I actually can't remember a ton about this other than I think some lucky card draw got me ahead pretty early. I mulliganed into a situation where I could score Silver Lining, which cascaded into some other things. And so somewhere in the middle of round 2, I think, or maybe end of round 2, it was up 14-1. And at this point, he chose to concede because he was hoping to maximize his time for a game 2 and a game 3. And we'd already kind of taken some time there. So the 14-1 instead became a 15-0. And then we launched into game 2. Here he was able to do an offset, and I was working real hard with the objective placements, and I actually managed to force more of the objectives into my board. I was placing 3, but it wasn't a guarantee. But I was able to place the last one on an edge hex, which was ended up being a big deal because it gave me a whole lot of flexibility on where to place it. I'm trying to think of the last time I'd seen that happen, and it happened to me twice this weekend where an objective got forced into an edge hex, which was kind of crazy. And this, man, so the final score in the second game was really lopsided, but our first round was so close, and it was just exactly what I love about it is like these head games where I had not much to score. I think I needed to be standing. I had sinking feeling, so holding more feature tokens, and then I had one that was if I was holding objective 3, which I'd been able to place, so I knew exactly where it was. The thing was, Brian correctly figured out which one was objective 3 and knew that I wanted it, and so he was working to challenge that. I think there was a lot of card draw early on, and then some people jumped out to commit. And there's kind of a great moment where I was like, okay, like I don't have scan. I know he runs scan. What do I need to do to try and block that? I've been holding Bahanar's push tectonic force. So I was planning to wait until something delved in his territory, like basically make it look like I wasn't going to delve anything, potentially. And then force him to delve on his side. And then once he delved it, push him off of it so that it would be vacant. But before we even got there, he was looking to push me off of, he'd kind of tipped his hand a little bit. He'd started to play a hypnotic buzz earlier in the round and then chose to take it back. I was also trying to play the round as if he had it, but that kind of changed my order of operations a little bit. So a misplay here opened the door a little bit for me because he was sitting over there with Slake Slash near my guy holding the gloom hex that would become objective 3, and I had the first opportunity, so I delved it before he could push, which then put him in the hard spot of like, okay, do I push you off and then break my own scant resources? And I think he made the correct play where he's like, well, even if he's got hold objective 3, he was saying he's willing to give me 1 glory to get 2 himself on scant. But then I also managed to pull off the push. So I got the 1 there and the push, and it meant coming out of that first round, I was up 3. I'd only scored 3 glory, but crucially he'd scored 0. And so,
Yeah.
You would rather, I'd rather make it 3-0 than have, than 6-3. Right. Like,
Yep.
Cause that meant I had a little bit to work with my upgrades, and he was still totally starved. It meant that like half his power deck was still not going to work for him as long as we keep that going.
Yep.
And I'd also laid a big hit on Slake Slash, which was setting me up good for the next round. And then things kind of cascaded from there, and I took that something like 17-0. So coming out of that round with a 2-0 win and then a 32 glory differential was a really huge boost for me for any tiebreakers that would come down the line.
Yeah.
And I felt real bad for Brian here because I don't think he played poorly. I think I just had the card flow just right and the timing of things just lined up just right. And he to his credit, he took it like a champ, and he didn't let it throw him off because he went on to keep playing well for the rest of the day. So kudos to him. Phil, you are now 1-1 on the day. So you're drawn into someone else who's lost 1-1. What's your next match look like?
Yeah. So crucially, I'm 1-1, but I had to go to 3 in each match. So my record is about as bad as it can be in the 1-1 situation. I end up drawing into Skylar. So again, we're having to beat up on our own folks, but it happens.
When y'all make the cut,
Yeah. When you're making up, close to half the field, you're going to play each other. So he's playing Head Crackers. I know this matchup. I've played him at the shop weeks leading up to Adepticon. I know the matchup well, and it's always been a really tough matchup for him. So I felt like this was probably kind of an easier matchup for me.
To his credit, it sounds like Skylar playing. He was describing some of his other games against Crushes, and he'd taken a lot of lessons learned from those matchups, and did some real veteran moves. Like he has a number of things for being in enemy territory, and he would just start discarding those. He's like, I think I have enough to outscore you. If I can make you come to me, and I'll fight Advent. I'll sacrifice some of my objective deck in exchange for having an advantage as far as board position, and to potentially starve the opponent. And it sounds like he worked his way through some Crushes matchups real well. But this one not as much, right?
Yeah, so he had board choice the first time. So
Mhm.
he did made me place first. So he hallwayed me in the first matchup, which is obviously not good for me. Um, but I still had things like commanding stride, and
Yeah.
I had outrun death, and so I I didn't draw them both in the first hand, but I had one or the other. I can't remember which, and so I had some surprise movement for him, and I basically got right in there right away, and start putting the beat down,
Mhm.
and it at that point it just devolved into smacking each other back and forth. But um, when every one of his hits is taking half of my life or less, and every one of
Mhm.
my hits is almost killing a fighter, it just snowballs out of control, and
Yeah.
um, it was pretty brutal. And then obviously, since going into the second match, since he had placed the boards, I got to decide how we were playing the second one and squared it off, and that one was less close because everybody was just in there right away.
Got it.
Um, so yeah, I don't know exactly what the differences were between my crushes and everybody else's, but it went about how I expected it to go. Um, and not to say that Skylar wasn't doing the right things. I think he played the matchup entirely correctly. It's just he could not stop me from just getting in there and stomping all his guys.
Yeah, in my limited view of some of the other ones, I played against one. Kind of discussed some of the others. I think you had more mobility built in than some of the others. I think uh, whenever I was playing against you in that matchup, there's always that commanding stride. There's counter charge, and there's mirror move.
Yeah,
All these things that were propelling you into the fight faster, which would give you more time to start scoring those aggro objectives, rather than that give you time to miss a few attacks and still kind of get work through your deck.
yeah, yeah,
Other ones were they had a much more limited number of attacks because of the lower mobility. So
for sure.
yeah. For me, I drew into Requisition, and he had a Skaven deck, and I knew a little bit about this because we had uh, I I'm not gonna say I talked him into it, but I was telling him I thought it was really good after we had kind of snagged a version of it for Aaron, um, and so I don't remember what he was originally thinking of bringing, but he definitely brought that, and
Soul Raid.
yeah, oh, he's going to originally bring Soul Raid. All right,
Yeah.
interesting. So I talked to I'd some of his opponents from the previous day. I'd had a chance to chat with, so I knew that he was pretty passive, and uh, I was real worried about being that he would have more pushes or more tricks than I had to figure out how to balance the more uh, how do I block him off of what he wants to do, and how do I get aggro with him while still kind of scoring some of my stuff, a lot of which wants me to stand on things. And so I went with a strategy of trying to like go first and then aggressively stand on the objectives that he might be running onto. Basically, he was going to be sprinting rats into my territory to get things like horrors in the dark. Um, I think eventually later lengthening shadows for having more fighters in my half. I think making statements in there, um, fearless seekers, that sort of thing. So my goal was to make those very difficult to score. And usually in a positioning game, I would prefer to take the last one. But what I was trying to do is stand on him and force him. Because if he can just move directly onto them, each one that he gets to move onto, that's one less card that he needs to use.
Hmm.
And so what I was trying to do is step onto them or step onto those feature tokens and say, okay, like I'm on this now. You got to get me off. And it's going to take either an attack, which you're not necessarily great at, but it turns out Scritch is great. Perhaps the greatest. Yes, yes.
Yes.
But that was the tactic I went for. In the first game, it did not work out. He kind of ran away with it. In the second game, I I blew it out big time. I kind of scored through my entire deck and killed everything multiple times in some cases. And so it went down to third and had kind of a decent start, and it was a little back and forth. He was pulling into the lead, and then he gave me too many hard choices. He played it really well, and I think I made an error in the second round where I thought I had a chance to take down Scritch, and so I was committing to that, and he put on too many wound upgrades and managed to get out of there with 1 wound remaining. And then in that last round, I'm embarrassed to say I got a little my body language got a little frustrated. I was kind of tossing my cards down in disgust when I would get when he successfully defended attack. But what's key here is that I was feeling that pressure to have these dice rolls come my way because he was playing so well. He was putting me in the position of I'm the one having to chase the successful attack of 2 smash into 2 dodge on a cover hex or like, oh, I hope I can get a crit so that Sanella can have her grievous damage be enough to blow this guy off of a terrain or off a cover hex and such. So I at the end of it, I was glad to shake his hand and tell him that he had definitely outplayed me on that. He built a heck of a deck and played it really well. And honestly, I was almost relieved to have at least gotten 1 from him because it was another good thing for tiebreakers down the way. I was, of course, disappointed it was a chance to get to the finals and didn't quite pull that off. But it was a really good match. It was awesome. It's the kind of deck that I always want to be able to run, where you're kind of taking some of the dice out of it, except for maybe defensive dice, and you're really doing a ton with your cards. But I'm not as good as some of those people, so I was excited for him to advance. And I think we actually talked to him. We're going to be bringing him on to talk about this deck because it was quite a creation, and I think the thought process behind putting it together and then implementing it will be really worth further discussion. So,
so because I finished my match early, I actually got to watch the last round of your match, and that game looked intense from every single activation. There's some crazy stuff. I particularly remember seeing he had run some rats back into your territory to stand on an objective, and I think you had gone in to like confusion him off or something, or like you had stepped away from a token or something to be like, I'm going to deny you from getting making a statement.
Right. So he that's exactly right. He charged someone who wasn't going to pull off a kill, but was adjacent to somebody I had on a hex, and I was looking at the board and I'm like, okay, I think he's going to confusion on, and if I give him that opportunity,
that was it.
Yep, he's going to confusion on. If I give him that opportunity, then he's going to have a chance at Fearless Seekers or even maybe making a statement. So I've got the first chance at a power card here because he just took his activation. I think I'm actually going to burn a sidestep. I'm going to step off of the terrain. I'm going to step off of the cover hex, and that way nobody's going to own it. He'll already have charged, and I'll still have the chance, to maybe take some range. I think it was a ranged fighter. I think I can maybe kill this rat. And then use a move to step back on later, possibly. And he's like, "Yeah, that's what I was trying for." However, and he lays down I can't even remember what it's the one that pulls you either push towards the closest cover or you drag it towards you. And so he just pulled it right underneath himself and then put himself on guard. It's like, oh my God.
It was shadow something. But it's
I don't know, man. I was like, oh man, he did it. And that's what I'm talking about when I said outplayed, because he was making those plays with not just a plan, but a backup plan. So very well played, very well deserved advance to the finals.
Indeed.
Phil, you're 2-1.
2-1 last. Yeah. So my last matchup that I drew, unfortunately, was against Gerard. Not because I didn't want to play Gerard, because he's great and getting to meet him was awesome. And I really look forward to hopefully seeing him again at another tournament. But he's playing Lady Heroes, and Lady Heroes have a decent amount of passive scoring. They have lots of defense. And so aggro into Heroes feels pretty bad. So I was thinking, I'm I'm probably out of this one, but I'm going to give him all I got.
Yeah.
So first matchup, pretty close. He actually got to offset us, but there's some interesting play where I started moving forward, and then he flew past me into my territory, and I had to send Art Skull back to try and get him. And
Yeah.
Art Skull actually did it, and so I got a number of kills in that game, and it was looking pretty close. I needed dice to go my way just a couple more times, but he just kept piling on the glory. But we ended
Yeah.
pretty close. It was, I think, 11-15 or something. So I only lost by 4. So I was like, okay, I think I know what to do here. I think I can pull out another like play 3 and get the win here.
Mm-hmm.
But then we went into the second match. I'd squared up the boards. It felt like I had the advantage, and my dice just left me. I think I hit once in the entire game. I scored a total of 1 glory and got completely blown out.
Oh no.
So the final game of the tournament for me was a bit of a letdown. The differential was horrible. And if the standings that we're reporting in BCP are correct, and I think they are at this point.
I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure they are, because they have
Okay.
no, I don't. Well, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, they're close-ish, probably, but it looks like it dropped me out of the top 10 from losing that game as badly as I did. So, I mean, kudos to Gerard for building an awesome deck.
Yeah.
And I know he gave you all sorts of trouble in day 1.
Yeah.
And he did not lose many games. He went undefeated pretty much in day 1 and almost on day 2. So
yeah. Gerard beat both of the What the Hex guys 2-0. So I think we'll have to get him on. Tell him to spill all the secrets. What does he know that we don't? How did he how did he take us down so bad? So, but at this time, I am not aware that that's going on, because I'm over in a battle for my life with Hrothgorn. A beautifully painted Hrothgorn, I should say. I was playing Kyle, who went on to win Best Painted for term, and just awesome. One thing you didn't mention, but was pretty awful about this round, was there was an event at the other end of the hall, Age of Sigmar or something.
Yes, I think it's just the major AOS tournament, just the overall.
Okay, well, they were announcing like their something. Presumably their winners.
I think they were doing the prizes,
and they had it was like cartoon level of volume on this thing. Like we were. It was so hard to hear each other in this, and after what already having played over the course of this weekend, we were playing our 9th match of Underworlds, so you're already brain fried, and there's this huge volume. And at our table, we had some extra things going on to the side, some sort of distracting things that made it hard to focus. And Kyle and I, had a couple of times, realized we were both just kind of staring at each other, like, and I'd be like, I'm actually not sure, but I think we might be in your second activation. And he'd be like, yeah, I think that might be right. Like, okay. So, Hrothgorn, I hadn't, for whatever reason, I hadn't thought a ton about this matchup. I thought I could outpassive him, but I was a little worried because Hrothgorn actually has plenty of passive surge. I was pretty sure his end phase stuff was going to need him to actually do things, though. So I was kind of relying on that. I tried hallwaying, and again, I didn't have a big. It was one of those like, okay, I think I can get Sinking Feeling, and I can get one other. So I think I've got a 2 glory end phase. But I'd drawn in. I scored 1 surge, and I had a bit of an upgrade. And I was like, you know what? I've got Bahanar up. I've got an opportunity. I ended up throwing him up and laying like a 4 damage hit on the big man, 3 or 4 damage on Hrothgorn with the help of a furious blow, and I was feeling real good because I managed to land that. I managed to land on another another feature hex, feature hex, feature token, and so I was like, okay, I still have a ether quartz, so I've got a reroll. I'm on 2 block. I've got this cover. Like I'm feeling pretty good, and I put this big hit on Hrothgorn which and he's still not inspired. That means next turn, if I can either get first activation or go again, I can have him trapped against the side and hit him again and just finish this game before it's even started. Unfortunately, he had last activation. He used a push to drag me next to him. So all of a sudden I went from having double supports to help to him having single supports to help. I was like, well, this is probably still fine. I'm still on 2 shields. He tossed his attack, and I'm not complaining about dice because I'd had a great attack roll on him to put him in that position. But he saw my attack, which was a crit hit, to totally bypass his 1 defense dice and threw a double crit attack from Rothgorn back at me. And I was like, could not survive that. And so all of a sudden I was in a super bad way. He was, his warband was inspired. I'd given him glory because he got a bunch of, he got surge off of that. He got primacy off of that. I was like, man, I think I might have just thrown this game away. I should have hung back. I think, see if the passive would have done it. In a real bad way. I had to engineer some crazy stuff with a big channel the river push with Aelin to go 3 and then charge 4 to kill Bushwhacker way at the back, and then Aelin went down, but that got me enough seed to get 3 upgrades on somebody else, so I could score Pursuit of Excellence, and I just managed to start to pull ahead when Hrothgorn Commanding Stride came in, or I should say, Hrothgorn turned around and started barreling towards my last remaining fighters. I'd managed to, he'd done a little bit of healing. I was trying to inspire Miari, who had a lot of defensive upgrades. I was trying to get Miari to where he could start throwing the heavier spell around and maybe get the last of Hrothgorn's health down. But I wanted the inspire first, so I did the one dice attack on smash attack with heightened senses, so I have a reroll. Landed the hit, burned the ether quartz to make it have cleave and ensnare and discard heightened senses. Got it through. With Glory Seeker, got Hrothgorn down to a single wound. I was like, okay, I've got Channel the Wind in hand. As long as he doesn't play a wound upgrade, I've got it. He drops a Commanding Stride to get around to the back, and then I kill him off with Channel the Wind. And Kyle was holding his head in his hands because he had not 1 but 2 wound upgrades in his hand. And this is where Miari's helped me out, because he just hadn't played Miari's in long enough. They just didn't think there was any ping out there anymore.
Yeah.
So that I stole a win there. I think if I don't do that, I think he probably is able to. I would have had to land another attack, which just was unlikely to happen. So I get out of that with a win. Unfortunately, that's used up my long boards, my hallway game.
Yeah.
And then we bring it on again. And this one was another incredibly tight one. I managed to actually do a whole lot of damage to his back line and had some good defensive rolls. It took Hrothgorn a long time to get anyone dead. But when he eventually did, he had a huge surge to pick up. I think I was in the lead by 15 to 7 or 8. It was looking real good, but then he got a kill, got Primal Lunge on, and he had primacy. So then he was able to charge back in to his own territory where Bahanar was finishing up the last of his little guys, make an attack. I had a ton of defensive tech, so that missed. But then he was able to discard primacy to attack again. And that one, so that missed. Bahanar survives, and the final score in that round is 15-14 to me, which means that the discarded primacy actually ended up being the crucial difference.
Oh no!
So I tried stepping back. All I had to do was stand on one feature token to get Sinking Feeling. I stepped onto it and he distracted me off of it. So I had a 0 score. I didn't score any of my end phase in that last one. I think he understandably had to operate under the assumption that I would probably score something. So he didn't have a choice. He didn't know it at the time. He had to try for it. But if he had not discarded the primacy for one more swing on Bahanar, or if he had just killed Bahanar, he would have had that win. Which is all a long way to say that I snuck out of there with a 2-0 win. And not a lot of glory differential in that matchup, but with some of the earlier ones, it actually propelled me up to second place. So that was pretty exciting for me.
Yeah.
It felt really weird to end up in second after ahead of Gerard and Requisite, who had both soundly beaten me, both outplayed me. But I guess that's just the way the format goes. And I'll be honest, it's nice to have that, second place. But I think I rather would have not had it and had a chance at the finals.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Definitely.
if I were Requisite in this case, I'd be happy to have had the shot at that first place. So that's where we ended up. Phil, what do you think of the weekend?
Oh man, it was great. I it was just really good to see people playing a lot of games in person.
Mm-hmm. I did the math. I had 19 games because I only had
Yeah.
one match go to 3.
And I had 20, so
so many games.
so many games. It's like weeks and weeks worth of games, all in just 2 days.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm exaggerating. It might be more games than I played the rest of this year combined, all in that one weekend. So
Yeah, probably.
pretty close at least. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, I didn't do as well as I had wanted to. I wanted to like end up in the top quarter.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to improve on my performance from last Adepticon, which I ended in 32nd of 90. So I was like just at the top third. So I was like, okay, top quarter this time. That would be cool.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually not 100% sure of where my standing is because I don't know if we mentioned this, but after the first round of day 2, the BCP app was assuming that we were doing single cut elimination.
Yeah.
So it stopped tracking games completely. We had to go all to paper,
Mm-hmm.
which actually led to quite a bit of confusion. People started setting up for their matches and then realized that, oh, wait, this isn't actually going to be who I'm facing, and had to like scoop all their stuff they'd already set up. But so I think the final standings are fairly close to what they're supposed to be in BCP, but I don't think they're exactly correct. Just looking at it right now, I think it has you listed as third, and we know that you got second. So it is slightly off, but I don't know by how much. But either way, I think I'm around 10th or 11th, somewhere in there, which is not quite where I wanted to be, but I'm confident that I did have the best record of all the Crushes players. So I can at least say that I was the best Crushes player at.
Hang your hat on that, yeah.
I'm hanging my hat on that, and the Crushes were second most represented warband, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, I think they might have even been tied with Crimson Court.
Tied with Court, okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I felt pretty good about that because I figured they were going to be tough matchups for a lot of people. So, came out of it excited for the next one, but ready to rest and like unwind a little bit. My brain was just so fried after that last round.
Yeah. Trying to chat on the ride home. We're definitely like,
you're dragging.
Yeah. We'd be looking for word, like, it's like, yeah, in the last match that I played, round.
What are words?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts about the deck? Any regrets or wishes that you'd done differently in there?
Yeah. So most of the deck I really liked. I thought it worked very well. Obviously, it was dice dependent, but I had plenty of ways to add dice. I rolled over 5 dice a number of times in the tournament, so I did have to actually pull my second set of dice a couple of times to make sure I had enough dice to roll.
Is that Thug's fault or?
Yes, that's Thug's fault because he could be adding 2 dice on his attacks a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And then have another bonus. But so So that all felt really good. In terms of objectives, though, Silver Lining was a real dud. And I don't know if that's just because of how my cards just kept coming out, but it was like I'd have 3 upgrades and I'd be like, okay, I have enough active, or I have a few enough number of fighters that I probably have extra activation. So I can like draw some power cards and probably do this.
Yeah.
I think every single time I did that, I did not get what I needed.
Oh man.
And so then I would like get to the end of a round where I'd held and be like, okay, well, I can't just hold on to 3 upgrades without playing them when I've got glory. Like I need to just
Yep.
power up my fighters. So I'd play them all out, discard it. Next hand, I'd have 4 upgrades. Like I'd just be like driving myself nuts with Silver Lining the entire time. I think I scored it once in the entire tournament. So across 20 games, I scored it once. So definitely regretted that. And so I don't know what I would put in instead, but it was rough and I didn't like it at all. And then the only thing else that didn't really work out for me, so I had brought Primal Lunge thinking the extra attacks would be useful. A lot of the time I ended up deciding the 1 guaranteed glory is worth more than a potential attack. So I ended up not even using it. I never, I played it out, but I never actually used it once. And then I had Blunt Force Mastery, which was definitely a weird choice. And I knew it was a weird choice, but I thought there's going to be times where I will land a hit on someone who's on guard and I need to drive them back. And so having the ability to react and push instead of do a drive back could actually be useful. It never once came up. The stagger never once was relevant. So it was like, yeah, all right, that was a dud. That did not work out particularly well.
All right.
But all said, having like 3 cards that I wasn't happy with felt really solid. So feel good about the deck, but I do not want to play Crushes again for a long time. How about you? How did Mayari's deck end up feeling after you were done?
It felt pretty good, but what I figured out was the blind spot I'd kind of built for myself was I'd gone a little bit too all in on one thing. So I'd basically I'd set myself up with a lot of defensive stuff. I was really heavily weighted defensively, and it meant I was a little short on accuracy. I kind of defense and damage, but accuracy was a little lacking, and also my defense was. I just kind of given into the fact that I could get get killed in one shot. Everybody starts on 3 health. That's too much work to fix that. I'm going to do it with dice instead. So I'm going to, I don't think I really gave myself extra dice, but I would give myself rerolls or make extra faces of the dice successful. So that brought in some kind of edge cases like Perfect Stance, which gives you single supports on defense. Prevent Stagger, which also never came up. What that meant is that I had a couple. The accuracy was a glaring weakness for when I was playing in my 2 losses, which were against a warband like Mournflight, which starts on 2 dodge, or Spike Claws, which doesn't start on 2 dodge, but basically does when there's carnivores all out there, or a ton of push. Like the relevant ones are probably going to be inspired. They're going to get chosen. So by a choose ploy. So I had a real hard time when I absolutely had to hit somebody. I, often didn't have what I needed to do that. And then the other piece was against Mournflight. They agonized one. I can't remember.
Yes, I think that's the one.
Or anguished one. That's the word. The anguished one. Is the one that ignores defensive crits, and so it doesn't matter how many faces of the dice are good for me. If the anguished one doing 3 damage managed to roll a crit, that fighter's dead.
Well, you're hit at least, but for you, you're dead.
Yeah, for me, exactly. For me, I'm dead. And so there, I had cycled out Heartstone Amulet. It might have actually been helpful to have in there to help out with that situation. It's hard to say because I'm sure Gerard was throwing away damage upgrades and such. But yeah, so I was a little too one-sided on that. For offensive stuff, maybe something like Chairite Claws to put get cleave on Bahanar might have made a big difference on some of his attacks on how he's swinging. I think that might be the tweak I would make to make it a little better all comers. But obviously, did better than I have ever done before at one of these things, so that felt pretty good. And also, it was cool to bring a faction like Miari's. I had a huge, not a huge. I had a not negligible boost by the number of players who were unfamiliar with Miari. So that was kind of cool to do that. But I wouldn't recommend it for anybody who has heart trouble, because every attack is like, oh my god, like this might kill me, even though I have like, succeeding on every roll with a reroll and then another reroll if I want it. Like if there's just 2 crits, it's gonna be gonzo. So it was very, very stressful dice rolling with that warband, but enjoyable. But like you, they're getting put away for some time. I'm gonna go find something else. We should wrap up here, but what are you thinking of bringing? What warbands have caught your eye as far as what might you be playing around with?
Well, I had in my head before we started Adepticon prep that I was going to try and figure out how to do black powder. So I did some chatting with folks on the Discord yesterday, trying to get ideas of who's been playing them, what they've been feeling is working. Actually got a deck that was coming from Godsworn Gamer. Yeah. So shout out there. Looks like he's been repping them for a while. Has sort of figured out a deck that he likes. I'm going to probably use that as my base and start there. Looks interesting. Still feels like it's a really big uphill battle, but I'm interested in the challenge.
Sure.
And then I do want to go back to the Starblood Stalkers. I kind of regretted not playing them at Adepticon because I did have so many reps with them, and I know they are good. My assumption was that like, oh, they're going to hit aggro and they're just going to get blown up. But as we saw with a number of other warbands that were there, that is not necessarily the case. And having large scoring can really put games away, even if you do get killed. So definitely going to pull them back out. And then I think just a little bit with Reavers, just as a sort of palate cleanser. You don't have to think. It's just you go forward. Oh, you killed me? Good. I'm going to score off of that.
Exactly. Myself, I'm kind of interested with this the Exiled Dead, the electric slide zombies that are coming out. I'd like to check them out. And then something real thinky. So the Cunning Crew, or maybe even Soul Raid. One of those. Those are kind of the 3 leaders in the clubhouse right now for what I might try out next. So
for sure,
we're not really sure when the Exiled Dead will actually arrive. So in the meantime, maybe I'll paint up some Cunning Crew or Soul Raid. Check them out.
Sweet.
Yeah. We have already done the wrap up with our other recording, so we don't have to hit those usual things. But any last things you want to say about the tournament as a whole, or anything like that?
Just another shout out to everybody who was there. Everyone was super great. Really good matchups. Really great people. Another shout out to Tony. Ran a great tournament. Had a number of like weird circumstances had to deal with, including having to eventually do all the pairings by hand, which is not what you want as a TO. So so it was really great. Hopefully we see him again at another major tournament.
For me, it was just awesome to put so many faces to names or voices. Something you hear from talking to them online. It was really excellent to do that. I said it before, but I owe another thanks to Lethenham, who was kind of my sounding board for some list ideas with the purifiers. So thank you. Sure. That was really fun. And then also just want to express we're really proud of our Madison crew for so many making the cut, and then for representing. I think on and off the table, they represented very well. And I was really happy. There were quite a few people who were asking if we had Madison events going on. And I think that's a tribute to the folks who came down with us and kind of showed that we got really good folks to play with up there, and people are interested in doing it again. So looking forward to that, and I'm just proud of our group. So I think that's going to wrap it up. We're going to wrap it up here, so we can wrap it up in the past / question mark recording. Anyway, thanks for listening to this.
Any last thoughts before we get out of here?
Just that it was an awesome time, and I hope next year that we get a few more people. I think I've already seen people in the Discord being like, "Oh, maybe next year I'll come out."
Well, what do you think? So there were like 42 signups and some pre-drops, ended up on 38. What do you think of that kind of turnout? Do you have any?
I think considering how long it's been and still having pandemic stuff going on, and I feel like it's pretty good. I had hoped that we'd have more, but I'm happy with it. I think it still worked out pretty well.
I hoped for more, but I think if you look at it in the context of they were prepared for 128, 128, then it feels bad. But if you look at it in the context of LVO had like 5 people.
LVO
and
this very bad.
This is almost a relief where you're like, okay, all right, there's at least enough people to run.
It's a real tournament,
honest to goodness event. And there's been clashes with a lot less than that. Even back then there was some up in Scotland that were 26 or something. I don't know. I mean, whatever. It doesn't. Whatever. To say it's not, it's not the smallest clash that there's been, and it's nice that I was worried after hearing LVO. I was like, oh man, is our Madison contingent going to be the entirety of this? Which I guess meant one of us would have walked away with class. But yeah, anyway, I think that's it. You can talk to us at all the usual places. We'll kind of skip through some of that.
Yeah.
Thanks to the Mortals Realms Network. It was cool. We got everybody together for the first time in a long time here.
Yeah.
We're here for that. So got some real charming pictures on the stairway. You can find those around. Recommended listening. I'm going to go with Warpaint Disco Very. Hopefully I haven't recommended that before. I don't know. We'll find out. But that is it. For What the Hex, I've been Davey.
And I've been Phil.
Woo! Aaron, give us a shout out from the back.
I don't know, goat men.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the ones with the butts.
Welcome to What the Hex, your source for war. Oh, I don't even have an under 30. Let's see.
Burned us before. Me, I should say. We got like a not great review at one point. I was like, what? Is somebody like furiously scribbling down notes in the background? That was when I was like, interesting. Like, oh, I know what happened.
Yep.
Mike is just brushing against my shirt while I'm talking into a mic that isn't actually the one I'm using. So, y'all recovered? We'll be hearing. I don't know even how to close this out. You'll hear from us again. So
splice it in somehow.
Yep. Just fix it in post. All right. Cool. I'm gonna hit stop.